Chapter 60. Kara. I wake up with a stinging headache, the dryness in my mouth distracting as my senses expand outwards, and I realize that I'm curled around Blue. Our legs are intertwined, and from where he's nestled into my neck, I can feel just as much as I can hear his quiet breathing. I have a 2-second heart attack before I realize that we both still have our clothes on. Last night as a whole is a little bit of a blur, but I remember the somewhat detached feeling of my hands curling under his clothes and him squirming, but offering no words or movements against me. There's a sick feeling in my stomach at that. What did I expect? Him to say no? To smack me, tell me I was drunk and should sleep my buzz off in the guest room? Or better yet, on the couch? No, he wouldn't do that. He never would have thought he could. I'm glad it didn't go any farther last night. I remember hazily putting Blue to rest on my chest, the comforting weight of his body and his voice as he had talked about his book. The memory brings a smile to my face unbidden. Maybe not all is lost after all. I carefully extract myself from the bed, untangling my limbs without disturbing Blue too much. I tuck the blanket back around him and move to the bathroom before I can give in to the urge to stay in bed with him. My whole body aches as I move to the bathroom. Last night hadn't exactly gone as planned, and I suspect it has a little something to do with Shauna bribing bartenders to keep bringing drinks around to our tables. I hold my head and try to fend off the harsh glare of the light in the mirrors as another wave of nausea rolls through me. There's a dull pain in my chest that's mirrored on the left side of my face, and I realize with the faintest bit of relief that my necklace has stayed on through the night's festivities. I brace myself as I slide off the glamour, and with it goes any hope of concealing the disastrous state I'm in. At some point in the night, my shirt must have gotten torn, but I sure as hell don't remember why. The 2 bruises, the one down my side and the one down my face, I very much still remember at least, and they were bruises well earned. My hair is just a shade deeper blonde than it was in the illusion, but it's not something anybody would really notice. I'm almost amused to find that my hair has gotten a bit longer since last I made the glamour. The only thing that's got me worried is the darkening bruise on my face. That's something I certainly didn't have yesterday, and it is something that anyone would definitely notice. It could be worse, I remind myself. It could always be worse. This is something fairly simple to explain away. A drunken brawl between 2 fools too full of drink. I just take a while to bruise. There are stranger things in this world than a man coming home from a bar fight to be bruised the next morning. I allow myself the indulgence of a long and blisteringly hot shower. I just stand in the spray as the pulses of heat nearly mirror the pounding in my head. Regardless, toothpaste gets the flavor of old liquors out of my mouth, and the soap washes away any trace of the bar rooms we'd paraded through last night. I try my very best to dress and exit quietly, but before I can so much as get to the bathroom door, I know I've woken the light sleeper in my bed. "Master?" Blue's voice is still deep and crackly from sleep, but there's no hope for me to sneak by undetected. "Oh, Blue, you're up!" I peek out of the bathroom door, revealing my presence. It's almost worth the surprised little jump he makes at my entrance, the little sleepy twitch that his ears give in response to my voice. I can't help the smile that comes to my face at the sight. It doesn't last long, as Blue's relief is immediately overtaken, and his face scrunches up in confusion. "What happened to your face?" He speaks through a yawn, but his eyes are no less focused on me. Why had I thought that I could get away with this for any period of time? "I had a little run-in with some people who thought I looked better with a bruise. Luckily, I was able to show them how much better they wore it. I was hoping the hit they got in on me wouldn't bruise, but, well, I guess I was too distracted last night to notice." I try to laugh it off, but I know that it falls short. Blue cocks his head, one eyebrow quirked. He doesn't believe me, and I don't blame him. It's a piss-poor lie, and I would be ashamed of it if I wasn't so busy trying to fight a hangover. It's been one hell of a night, and I am not prepared to have a productive morning. Or midday. Looking out the window, I see that the suns are high in the sky, and I feel another bit of pounding pressure in my head. I don't sleep this late, and my head is spinning with all the stuff that I have to do. A thought that's abruptly cut off by the sound of knocking at the door. As used to visitors as I am rapidly becoming, knocking on the front door is still very uncommon. I nearly rush out of the room, smiling, saved by the bell, before a rush of memories and a half-joking promise that I'd made the night before comes back to me all at once. I'd met someone I knew back in the old days. One of the old master sergeants that served under me, Laurel Cates. She was no noblewoman. In fact, if I remember correctly, her full-time enlistment was due to some financial troubles that her mother and sister had been having. But she was always a hard worker and an incredible soldier to boot. She deserved to rank up into the Knights Circle. But she never would. She knew what it would mean for her, and she just kept passing up the promotion. We lost touch when we were called back in. I recognized her from the bar, and after a few minutes she seemed to recognize me in return. I distantly remember telling her where I lived, telling her that we should catch up. Stars. Why did I do that? She wouldn't have come by so quickly, right? A quick peek through the peephole shows that hope to be false. Clear as day, she stands before the door, hands tucked at her sides, holding perfect positioning despite there being no one around to reprimand her for it. I almost cringe at how put together she is, while I've only just started my day. I pull my hair up into a bun that I hope imparts some semblance of competency on the bearer, and brush my hands down the sides of my wrinkled shirt, willing the fabric to tame. It's not much, but it's the best that it's going to be in such a short amount of time. My hand is nearly shaking as I place it on the doorknob. I give myself a second to breathe. In, out, a simple concept, a steadying concept. I can't just leave her outside forever. I pull the door open gently, bracing myself against both her and the flood of light that comes with her. If she has any judgment of my physical presentation, she mercifully keeps it to herself. "Kay!" She stares openly for a moment, stunned in much the same way I was in the bar last night when I'd seen her, only she doesn't have alcohol helping her to be social. Still, the shock passes, and she eventually does get her thoughts back. "I have to be honest, part of me thought you were joking last night, or maybe that you were just a mirage." "Never a mirage, merely an illusion." I smile back at her. "How have you been?" "Well, I can say that I've never been more surprised. All the way back in Capital City. Never thought I'd see you here." "I was made an offer I couldn't refuse," I answer simply. It's basically the truth, and there's no sense in lying to her. She could always tell when I lied, no matter what. I offer to take her coat, and I don't miss the wince as she slides the fabric off her shoulders. The guilt wells up in me with such intensity that it takes me by surprise. But she locks eyes with me, 1,000 times stronger than I will ever be, and shakes her head, dismissing the whole event before it could begin. She doesn't want to talk about it. I understand. She's told me 1,000 times that it wasn't my fault, that I made the right call, and she's more than willing to live with the consequences. But I still can't stop the guilt from coating my insides and roiling around like something thick, dark, and cold. I smile. I don't bother to try and make it convincing, but she accepts it nonetheless. She'll accept my acquiescence. She can't ask any more than that. She hides the scars well. I can't help the way that the thought comes to mind without my prompting, the way my eyes slide over her form looking for the remnants of my mistakes. She holds herself differently. She's not as perfectly fearless as I knew her to be, and yet her presence is no smaller. She's got to be in her mid-30s now, but I doubt anyone would be able to tell by looking at her. Only the faintest hint of lines sit on her forehead, and it's only when the light hits her just right. Her hair is still the same short-cropped mess that sticks up in all directions, even with the help of gallons of product, though I do see that she's stopped trying. I have to resist the urge to congratulate her for it. It does look better when it's allowed to stick up and flow naturally. Not to mention, the product had smelled worse than tar. She's changed so much, and yet she's still so eerily familiar. Her posture is still so perfect that even Pleachar would have no corrections for her, and yet there is something off. Well, we all find ourselves in strange places. She eyes me up and down, seemingly having accepted the line for what it is as she takes a casual look at what more of the house she can see from the entryway before turning back to me. Even so, I don't suppose I will see you outside today. Her knowing smirk is contagious, and without any thought of my own, I can feel the corners of my mouth being pulled up. Not if I can help it. I'm fully prepared to seclude myself inside my home and wait for the festivities to pass, I answer honestly, hanging her coat on the rack. I have no desire to go out and see the parades and banners and get swept up in the crowds of people. Better to just stay in and get some work done. Just like always. She speaks quietly but makes no move to keep me from hearing her words. There's a jingling noise at the end of the hall, and it takes me by surprise to see Blue stooping down into a very formal bow. Before I have the chance to react to that, Laurel beats me to it. "Oh, you actually got one of those," she mumbles, clearly interested but not entirely surprised. You know about—" I stutter, not really sure exactly what I'm asking. She'd known I was a mage, but I'd never needed a familiar before this. Then again, I keep forgetting that people seem to just have familiars as pets sometimes. Perhaps she grew up with a pet like Blue, or at least with some more exposure than I did. "Yeah, some people have those in the army," she explains, though it leaves me with more questions than answers. "Are you kidding me?" I can't keep the incredulous tone from my voice. How had I missed familiars in the army? Though I guess in retrospect it makes sense. There were mages. Why wouldn't there be familiars? Our division was never really supposed to have mages. Why would we have ever run into any familiars? "It's quite common for well-stationed men and women to keep them or be gifted them, though it's not uncommon for commanders to build regiments that forbid them." She shrugs, bringing in a point that I hadn't considered. "Some say it's good to reward the soldiers, some say it's a distraction. I've heard that some of the frontline runners use them for scouting missions where they wouldn't send their own. I suppose I wouldn't know. How is it, having a kitty in the house?" She looks back at me, stopped halfway between me and Blue in the hallway, like I could still provide her with an answer with all that she's dumped on me. Blue doesn't seem to be faring any better than me. He seems to have gotten stuck in the little bow he's done for her, like he's awaiting judgment. It takes me a second to sort my own thoughts away and realize that's exactly what he's doing. "Blue?" It takes a physical effort not to react to his flinch at being addressed. I want nothing more than to comfort him, but right now I'll settle for getting him out of this tense atmosphere. "Blue, can you grab us some tea?" Blue simply nods and bows, slinking back down the hall to the kitchen, while Laurel just quirks an eyebrow at me. "Honestly, he's been good for me," I say quickly, trying to ignore the heat rising to my face under her gaze. I don't think I understood how deeply the silence ate away at me until he was there to break it. "Plus, he's a great help around the house," I finish lamely, but Laurel smiles regardless, seemingly pleased with my response. Perhaps I should find myself one. Stars know I've been needing help just to remember to put my head on in the morning. She looks away consideringly, but I can't tell whether she's just messing with me or if she's actually considering getting a pet. "I can't say you would be the worst to live with, though I still have to say that you snore like a hill beast." I can't resist the jab. Like old times, yeah? Let it be like old times? "Oh, and I suppose you are just an angel in your sleep," she snorts, and something deep in my chest unclenches as I lead her in to find a seat in the living room. "I suppose I should check out one of those little animal shelters or kennels." "What?" I can't help the surprise in my voice. I had known there were other places than the cages market to find a familiar, but an animal shelter? Could you really find a familiar in one of those places? I figured those were more for actual animals, not familiars. I feel foolish for a moment as I remember that public opinions on familiars have them ranked more closely to animals than to intelligent beings. Isn't that where you got him? She quirks a brow as her face screws up in confusion. I don't know how to answer that. I should say I got him at the market, but then she'd start asking why I picked a mutt breed rather than a better familiar. It's almost better having her think that he was my only option at some local kennel if it means I don't have to defend my choices to her first thing in the, well, afternoon. Apparently I hesitate too long as she launches into an entirely new tirade. Oh, Kara, please tell me you didn't take him in off the streets. That's stupid and dangerous, even for you. She speaks with the tone of a disappointed mother, cross with her child for accepting sweets from a stranger, but still accepting that that's the kind of idiot she raised. I don't like it, but there's nothing I can do that will keep the embarrassment from rising in my chest like I owe her something. I do owe her, and all of them. I owe them my life, and it's not a debt that can be repaid. The nausea rolls around inside of me, and my hands go white-knuckled as I hold onto the armrest of the couch for dear life. My whole body feels like the world's found a new axis to spin on, but it just takes a few deep breaths before it all comes down. What's worse is when I open my eyes again and she's just looking at me with those open, wounded eyes. Like she's sorry. Like she knows she went too far, but isn't sure what did it. It's not you. It was never you. I didn't. I went with a friend to get him. I stutter through my explanation, and the answer sinks like a rock in a pond. The whole conversation just drops out of view. Unrecoverable. Unless someone decides to go wading into the pool to retrieve it. All right. I won't have you going and self-destructing with stupid decisions. She pauses before asking what I've been afraid she'd start with this whole time. Do they know you're here? Who? I ask stupidly, hoping that she will at least give me a moment, a second, to deny the possibility. Don't play dumb, Kay. It would be so easy for her to sound harsh, but she doesn't. She doesn't yell or scream. She doesn't storm out of the house or throw things. She doesn't threaten me or leave to preach my location from the mountaintops. She just sounds tired, disappointed. And that hurts so much worse. There's a warning stinging in my eyes, and I blink back the tears that I know I have no right to shed. No, they don't. I don't recognize the sound of my own voice. And the boys? She continues. And my stomach drops because, oh yes, our old little crew. Of course that wasn't what you were talking about in the first place. No, they don't even know I'm back in the country, I admit. The silence hangs in the air, and I can't look at her, but I can feel her eyes boring into me, digging into me, making room for her judgment. They'll probably want to see you. She says it like it's a suggestion, like she doesn't know. I don't know if I can see them, I admit, and it's the closest to the truth I can get. I won't force you. They miss you. Gothy probably wants to thank you for his life. She keeps going like it's the most casual thing in the world, like she's a storm mage reading out the weather forecast, and I have to cut her off. I can't, Laurel. I dare to raise my eyes to hers, and that's when I feel the heated tears rolling down my face. Right. Not as strong as you think you are, kid. It's gonna get you hurt someday. It's gonna get you killed. I don't have time to mourn my ability to keep a straight face. I just wipe my cheeks and utter a silent thanks to whatever stars smiled down on me, sending Blue back into the room with our cups of tea. Yeah, I know, kid. She whispers more to herself than to me and takes one of the cups from Blue. Thank you for the tea. She acknowledges my familiar, tipping her head in the most casual gesture of thanks I have ever seen her offer. Blue didn't get himself a cup, but I'm far too nauseous to drink, so I just set the mug on the low table and gesture Blue closer. I pull him so that his back is against my legs and I have full access to that fluffy mop of hair. I pet him until he leans back into my touch, and only then do I allow myself to look back up at Laurel. She's had nothing to say so far, and I am very inclined to keep it that way. I almost wish I hadn't recognized her at the bar, and I certainly wish I hadn't been buzzed enough already to think talking with her was a good idea. She's watching me closely, something in her eyes that I just can't pick apart. I realize, a little too late, that I've constructed a little wall between me and her. It's incredibly unfair that I've cast Blue in the role of my sentient shield, but either he doesn't notice or he doesn't object. And I need him here right now. More than I realized. "You're not going to get me to change my mind," I say, a little defensively. She hasn't said anything, but I will be damned if I allow her to guilt me into doing anything else stupid. "I know. You're as stubborn as I am. As you should be. I taught you everything you know." There's a strained bit of levity there, and I realize that she's trying to make a joke, trying to recapture some of the earlier levity that we'd shared. "Then what is this?" I ask, hoping the quietness I force into my voice hides just a bit of my desperation. "Well, if you aren't going to go back and see them, I have to bring back the message that you're at least doing okay." She forces a little half-smile and drinks from her mug. "In any case, have you heard about this nonsense about the soldiers of Puaj blighting their soils?"